one paper, wait for it, folks, one paper that served the entire Hampton Roads region, which is also the same as its broadcast area, served by television stations across the water. But we have 2/3 of our reading market served by the Virginian-Pilot and 1/3 served by the Daily Press over on the peninsula. And some people said, well, if there's a silver lining in this cloud, maybe there's the prospect of one paper. But most people think that's probably not going to happen. Bill Choyke, what's your research tell you?
Well, we did the story, Phil Walser did the story on Saturday, raising that as a possibility, and the regionalists would love it. The newspaper analysts, and maybe Ms. Fine might want to pipe in if she knows her area a little bit, kind of scoffed at it, although John Morton, who's kind of considered one of the deans of the newspaper industry analyst, said anything would be possible. Mm-hmm. And both publishers brushed it aside as well, saying regionalism might work for public policy but doesn't work in the newspaper business.
Yeah, I had a conversation with one of the executives yesterday over there, and that was sort of the sense that, and it's the same answer that every time, we've had this conversation, they've crunched the numbers, doesn't seem to work from a circulation perspective, and there's a piece of that you can understand. If you own a business in Virginia Beach, and you're expecting people from Newport News to come down and patronize that business, you really probably don't want to pay amped up advertising fees to make that happen. But the interesting piece of it is that if you think about it, if we had better transportation in the community, we might be able to make that happen. Who knows?
The one, if I could just add,
yeah.
The one idea that was thrown out there was a duopoly where you could have kind of a bunch of the backroom operations under
right.
one roof. You'd share some copy, but you'd have separate brands. And that could make some sense. The question is, does anybody want to try it?
Yeah. Lauren Richfine, is there that much creative thinking in the business of newspapers and acquisitions these days to make such a thing possible in a market such as ours?
Oh, it's very possible, and I think the duopoly that was just referred to in the industry is typically referred to as a joint operating agreement, and it's something that needs Justice Department approval for two papers to merge those operations. And the reason it's typically blessed is the idea of preserving two distinct editorial voices where there's this fear of media consolidation, and you see it today in cross-ownership, not wanting the same company to own a TV station or a newspaper in the same market. You don't want any one voice to have too much control. It probably makes modest sense economically. I think you've already commented from an advertiser point of view. It's not obvious that it would make sense, but certainly, as pointed out, from a back office point of view, if you could merge the production, if you could merge the distribution, there's things where you could save some money. I think, I want to go back to a question that you had posed, though, which is the change in ownership for any entity typically can be a positive when you bring in a fresh set of eyes. And certainly in the industry today, it would depend on who those fresh set of eyes are. One of the benefits of family ownership has been that they typically aren't trying to strive for the highest margins because they're not trying to report out to public shareholders who are always looking for increases or improvements. And in that sense, there's always been this sense of protection that they're going to run the paper better, it's going to be a higher quality because they aren't as concerned. At the same time, privately owned entities still enjoy making money, and there is financial pressure. And so the question has really been throughout the industry, public or private company, can you bring in, somebody, as you're just alluding to, with more creativity, who can really crack the code of what sells more papers or other related businesses? Landmark has done some impressive things through the years in terms of its diversification. It's just too small in any one of those areas, and so to be an effective TV station operator today, it helps to own a boatload of them to really leverage some of the costs that you have. Similarly, in the newspaper business, because the industry is so fragmented and so local, it's been difficult for the industry to really gain any true dominance online, because the things that would really allow them to be very effective would be better search engines, better types of ancillary online businesses, which are hard to justify from a cost point of view in any individual market. It's why you've seen things like the Yahoo Consortia, which is groups of newspapers that decided to join with Yahoo's Hot Jobs. It's why you've seen a group go behind Career Builder, because they're trying to find a way to leverage some of the really the expense of investing in technology. And so I think that's probably another motivation here, which is these entities probably do better if they're part of a bigger company, although it'll be interesting to see who buys either the company in entirety or the pieces.
Boy, as from the end user perspective, you have to sort of hope that that newspapers are not going away, because if they do, I don't know what television and radio station will do, to be perfectly frank, because they rely so heavily on the great product that comes out of the newspapers that serve this country. Let's go to Lisa on the line from Norfolk. Hi, Lisa. You're on the air.
Hello, Cathy.
Hi.
Excuse me. This is very fascinating on the use of the newspaper. And I believe it was just yesterday you had a guest on the use of visual information in
Yes.
journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've always thought it would be good if real facts and data were presented correctly as informatics and vetted in the newspaper, specifically city budgets, changes up and down, and then we could just buy the paper, get that information, slide it in a sleeve, and walk down to City Council.
So you would like to use a newspaper more as a public policy tool or support system. Lisa, thanks for the call. Bill Choyke, I know that the paper has been trying really hard to sort of put that very complex information in formats that we can engage it and understand it.
That's true. I mean, again, to put it in a format that you can analyze it and understand it is one of the kind of the missions that print can do, probably much more than electronic, although a lot of that stuff could go online and actually be available for online use. The problem is, as I found here in Norfolk, in a community in which, in a institution that has an aging readership, for instance,
right,
and this is the online accessibility is a lot less, or people's ways of doing business. We still, for instance, have 2 pages of stocks agate, and I fought hard to keep that and sell
right.
advertising, because our readership, 55 and older, still likes to look at 2, 3, 4, 5 stocks that they might own. And there's been a big backlash when newspapers have done away with stocks. So it's not even a matter of presenting the information. It's a matter of getting people to accept it that way.
And it's such a good point. It goes back to the point we were talking about in the first half of the program about this whole digital transition, digital divide. So much of the information resources around the transition to digital are online. Well, if you're not online in the first place, it would be very hard to access that. It's a great point. Gary's on the line from Hampton. Hi, Gary. You're on the air.